What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. A solid 9-7 last week, but my goodness, Shane Waldron is taking the Bears offense, and what the heck happened to the Cardinals? 2 duds in 2 eruption spots, but we look ahead to week 5, and there's some projections I really like this week. We'll start things off with Brock Bowers, higher than 43.5 receiving yards. Bowers has at least 40 receiving yards in 3 of 4 weeks, but he's coming off his worst game of the season against the Browns. His snap share, though, was up to 81%. That likely corresponds with just an increased need to get him on the field, get him involved in the offense, because they didn't have Davante Adams last week. They need another playmaker on the field. Adams, of course, going to miss another week after requesting the trade. Probably not going to play for the Raiders again this season. So this Raiders passing offense is once again going to flow through Bowers, Myers, and Tucker. Last week, basically everything could flow through Jacoby Myers. He commanded 10 of 24 targets for an insane 41.7% target share. This week, though, Pat Surtain, pretty much a guarantee he's going to follow him around, and so it makes it incredibly unlikely that Myers is going to command that level of target share. If they throw him the ball 42% of the time with Pat Surtain against him, bad things are going to happen for this Raiders offense. Also, the 24 total pass attempts, that's really low for a pass-leaning team, but that's basically because for the entire second half of the game, they were winning, which is also something that's not going to happen super often. The likelihood is this week, the total pass attempts are going to increase, and Myers is going to see a far lower percentage of those targets. That's going to open the door for a really big game from Brock Bowers, who, again, they're obviously going to need a lot because they don't have Adams as well. It also sets up pretty well for him. Tight ends do have the best matchup against Denver, and only the Jaguars run man coverage at a higher rate than the Broncos. Bowers has been fairly mediocre so far. It's a small sample, but so far in his career, fairly mediocre versus zone coverage, much better versus man. He's ranked outside the top 30 tight ends versus zone, but inside the top 7 in some metrics, top 5 versus man coverage. So especially if the Raiders find themselves down this week, which, you know, they're at Denver, they are underdogs. The average outcome here is that they will find themselves down. He can really blow past this 43.5 receiving yard projection. Another player I feel great about this week is Brian Thomas Jr., higher than 54.5 receiving yards. He's developed faster than I thought he would, and he actually finished second in fantasy points average separation score last week. So he's been playing really, really well. The main appeal here, though, is the matchup. We attacked this matchup last week with George Pickens. The Colts run a ton of cover 3. They're second behind only the Commanders in fantasy points allowed per drop back versus man coverage, or while playing man coverage. The Colts are actually a negative matchup for slot wide receivers as well, but a massively positive matchup for outside wide receivers, especially those who can win deep. They've given up a ton of big plays to outside wide receivers, and they basically just allow opposing wide receiver ones to just be isolated on the outside, to have little or no safety help. And that's obviously a bad thing when that outside wide receiver can get loose deep. We saw it last week with George Pickens. He had over 110, I think it was 117 receiving yards, but Odunze in week 3, 6 for 112 in a score. The Packers didn't really do anything in week 2. Well, they did a lot. They didn't have to do anything through the air. They only threw the ball 14 times, but Malik Willis had over 10 yards per completion. He had multiple explosive gains on only those 14 attempts, and he was 12 of 14. But they didn't have to do anything because they ran the ball for over like 260 yards, right? So it wasn't just because, you know, the Colts were shutting them down. It was because it was so easy for them to do everything else. But then week 1, Nico, 117. So you've got 3 of 4 matchups against the Colts this season where the outside wide receiver has posted over 110 receiving yards, with the one exception being that Malik Willis game where he was still nearly perfect through the air. It was just, again, they got gashed for over 260 yards. You're not going to see high passing totals when that happens. The Jaguars are going to need to throw the ball this weekend, and when they do, the matchup almost couldn't lean more towards Brian Thomas Jr. It's also a pretty exciting game overall. Like if you wanted to kind of stack this game around, I'd have no problem with that. No team is allowing more opponent plays than the Colts. Like their opponents are running well over 70 plays per game, which is crazy. You've got the Jaguars on the other side that have a bottom 3 defense by most metrics. And so you've got, an elite deep threat on the Jaguars side. You've got a matchup that favors deep threats. You're going against a team that allows a million plays. Your own defense can't stop anyone. So you're going to have to remain aggressive on offense. Like I normally don't do the ladder of the week at the beginning of the video, but Brian Thomas Jr. is just set up so well, such a good chance of dropping a nuke this week. I have to go with him. Like with last week, I've got a potential giveaway for all of you. I'm taking the adjusted higher on Brock Bowers, higher than 69.5 receiving yards, and then Brian Thomas Jr. higher than 99.5 receiving yards. If that hits, that combination of both of them hitting, I'm giving away $250 to a random person who likes and retweets my tweet about that. So if you want a tail, but you don't actually want to place anything on it, then that is an easy way to maybe get something if this is going to hit, but not needing to risk anything if it doesn't. If you do want a tail though, now's a great time to sign up for Underdog, and to do so, they're offering promos every day, a bunch of boosts for existing users, but then for new users as well, you're going to get free picks in the lobby. So it's a great time to sign up. The baseline for the combo of these two is 24x, but you should see a boost in the lobby. You can boost that up likely to 30x or maybe even more. Also, if you sign up for a new account with promo code FFA, then you'll get access to my picks earlier in the week, usually on like Tuesdays or Wednesdays, access to my rankings every week, my detailed projections, my weekly position reports, again, all free. They're making it so that you have to do a pick now before you get access. So when you sign up for the account, you do have to enter a pick into the lobby. But if you're going to make an account, why not make a pick as well when you're doing that? All right. So those are my two favorites this week. Let's rapid fire some other ones I like around that. We're going back to the Commanders matchup this week. We're taking Amari Cooper higher than 49.5 receiving yards. Marvin Harrison Jr. failed us last week, but even in doing so, he had 5 for 45 and a touchdown. We're so spoiled with how good wide receiver ones do against the Commanders that 5 receptions for 45 yards and a touchdown is a dud to us. They still project as an absolute smash spot for wide receivers. And you've got Amari Cooper playing, over 90% of the snaps. He has at least 8 targets in every single game. He's not going to maintain a 43.2% catch rate all season. Another big game will be coming soon for Amari Cooper. I think it'll be this week against the Commanders. I also really like Dontayvion Wicks, higher than 48.5 receiving yards. If you watched over the summer, you remember all the Wicks hype. Like, I love this kid. He's just so clearly a talented player, and he's finally going to see increased opportunities now that Christian Watson's sidelined with the high ankle sprain, probably like a month, he'll be out. So leading up to last week, we had Watson and Wicks rotating into that second outside wide receiver spot. And so neither one of them were going to be that great in fantasy because if you're kind of splitting a role, it's really difficult to consistently hit. But now he's going to play, around 80%, maybe higher than 80% of the snaps in a fantastic matchup against the Rams. Again, the Bears failed us last week, but that doesn't mean that the Rams are all of a sudden a good defense. They're the number one matchup for outside wide receivers. They've allowed by a mile the most passing yards per play. They're second to the Commanders in pass EPA per play allowed. They're allowing the second most total yards per game. They're tied for the longest average time to throw allowed for quarterbacks. They're allowing the 5th most fantasy points per drop back against man coverage, the 2nd most against zone coverage. Wicks has by far the highest average separation score in the team. He leads the wide receiver room with a 31% target rate per route run. He's been fantastic, and he should be the starting outside wide receiver ahead of Christian Watson. Even when Christian Watson returns, he is set up to explode this week. And if you wanted to take adjusted hires on him as well, not only take the line here, but take, 50, 60, 70 receiving yards, I'd be fine doing that as well. I also like Jalen Tolbert, higher than 34.5 receiving yards. The Steelers do have a very strong defense, but they've allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points per dropback to man coverage, but the 7th most when playing zone. Lamb, Ferguson, those are the Cowboys' go-to options against man coverage. But Tolbert sees his targets per route run jump from 9% against man, which is very bad, to 17% against zone, a much stronger number. Tolbert is also 2nd best on the team in separating versus cover 3. The Steelers run the 2nd most cover 3 in the league. We also have Brandon Cooks out this week with the knee infection. So Tolbert should play all the snaps he can handle. He's only played 2 games in his career with at least 75% or more of the snaps. That happened in week 2 when he had 6 receptions for 82 yards, and then in week 3 when he had 3 for 42. So he only needs 35 receiving yards to hit here. I think that happens well over 50% of the time, especially just given how banged up this Dallas Cowboys defense is. A lot of times you can take, hires on Dallas Cowboys receiving yards, and then you watch the game and you're like, they do well on offense, but then this defense is just so good that they just get up, they stay up, and they can run the ball. That's not really the case this season, especially with the 2 injuries they had last week. Their defense is not going to be that good. I really think the Steelers are going to find a lot of success on offense here, and so Dallas is going to have to remain aggressive all week. If he's the wide receiver too, he sets up decently given the schematic matchup for the Steelers. I think higher than 34.5 receiving yards is a really good pick. Final pick of the week, Zack Moss, higher than 15.5 receiving yards. I have the Ravens as the 3rd best matchup for running back receptions. And with how poorly this Bengals defense has played, it's fairly likely that the Ravens are going to get ahead in this spot. If the Bengals have to lean pass heavy, I think this sets up much more like a Zack Moss game than it does a Chase Brown game. I think Chase Brown is a much better pure runner, and I do think he should be getting more touches than he is. The problem is they really trust Zack Moss in pass protection, and so especially when we get into these specific spots where they're facing good pass rush and when they're facing a team that's probably going to beat them, probably going to get ahead, and they're going to need to throw it, they just trust having Moss out there more, because if they need him in pass protection, they don't want to have Chase Brown out there. We also have receiving totals this season of 17, 13, 39, and 27 so far for Zack Moss. And so in a good reception spot, I think higher than 15.5 receiving yards, it makes a lot of sense. So remember the giveaway. Whether you want to tail or not, that's completely up to you, but it's pretty plus EV to go over there, like and retweet something that could net you $250 if it hits. Again, only one of you is getting the $250, but hey, why not take a shot at that? And if you do want to tail, but you don't have an Underdog account yet, great time to sign up. It's Boosttober over there. They're giving away a ton of boosts. So honestly, if you want to take this one straight up, you can, but there should be a boost available to you in the lobby. You can probably get the one I mentioned for 30x, but you could go with something else as well. You don't have to tail exactly what I am doing, but not only will you get that, if you sign up for your first account, you're getting a free pick on top of that. You're getting access to my site for the rest of the season. So again, a great time to sign up for Underdog. Use promo code FFA. And again, you won't get access to my site until you make a pick. But why sign up if you're not going to make a pick? So good luck to everyone this weekend. That'll do it for this one. Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe if you are new here, but I'll catch you all on the next one.